On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with an abuse survivor named Arden. And Arden was raised by a gaslighting narcissistic mother. It's a story of being voiceless, abandonment, neglect, parentification, rage, and smearing. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. I am Brandon Chadwick, and with me today we have Arden. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. And if you want to be a guest like Arden is today, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. Click on the guest form button at the top of the page. There you can read all of our instructions. And please read them all and either send us an email at narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com or fill out our guest form and press the submit button. And please do send it in the format that we ask for. And there is a content warning for this episode. This survivor story is we do discuss physical abuse in this episode. So that is your content warning for today. And today you're going to hear Arden's story. And Arden was raised by a mom who used her in many ways. Parentification was big. Government money was another way. And Arden lived a life where there wasn't love from her mom, only neglect, only her mom's needs getting met. And this story is very much about the trauma bond of a mother and her daughter. As an adult, you still want love from your mom, from your parents. And it hurts. And sometimes even more, it hurts even more as an adult to have never received it and the realization that you never will. So a big thank you to Arden for being here. And now I'm going to get out of my way and your way. Arden, the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for having me. It really means a lot to finally start talking about my story. Thank you for helping letting that happen. So I guess I've got to start here with introducing my mother's story, because this is about growing up with my mom and just the way she treated me. Trying to understand who she was and why she did the things she did. So my mom grew up with two parents. Her father was in the Navy and they moved around quite a bit. Her mother worked. She had an older brother who was, I believe he was 3 years older than her. I didn't really know my grandfather or my mom's brother. I just know this, what I've heard from my mom in bits and pieces. Her dad was pretty strict with her and she had a hard time communicating, I guess. He would try to teach her math. And I heard a lot of stories about how she doesn't like math because of the way he would try to teach her and end up getting angry with her. They lived in Eastern Canada and my mom ended up getting pregnant at 16 or 17, an early age, and her parents weren't impressed at that and wasn't what they had wanted for her. So it was probably tough for her. She ended up getting married and she had a baby girl who was my older sister. And then she had a boy about a year or just over a year later. The relationship was abusive, that the man that she married, I guess he was not even quite a man yet. And it didn't last very long. She got away from that relationship. She had a roommate and she had her two kids with her and was working. And apparently her ex had a friend who was a police officer and he showed up while my mom was at work and took the kids. So the way my mom explained it was that back then it was a smaller town and the her ex's family was pretty prominent there, and people just tended to listen to them. And that's what happened. So after that, the kids kind of just disappeared. My mom wasn't able to get them back, didn't know where they were. Sounds very mysterious. So I kind of even had questions about that when I was young, when I first heard about it. Because my mother ended up leaving and moving farther west. So yeah, I wondered about that, thinking if I had kids, just trying to put myself in her shoes. So yeah, I wasn't there and I don't know the full extent of things, but I always did have questions. When my mom met my father, when she went out west, they got married. He was a lawyer. He had just become a lawyer, I guess, a few years into it. And my mom was a very beautiful lady. And it sounded like they fell in love right away and they got married. They were together for a few years, tried to get pregnant. My mom had a few miscarriages. My dad, being a lawyer, was actively trying to search out my mom's 2 kids. And what the stories that they had told were there was just dead ends and he wasn't able to find them. But anyway, my mom apparently really wanted to have more kids. And then I believe they were married about 4 years before I was born. And that was a great thing. Everybody was happy. And then my dad was heavily into drinking and he got disbarred from the Law Society. And we ended up moving away, putting our stuff in storage and leaving like the area that we were in, moving over to Vancouver Island. And then it was just my mom and me. My dad was just not around. I don't know where he was, but we were there for a couple of years, just her and I, and he would be in and out. I didn't really understand what was, happening at the time because I was pretty young, whether they were together, whether they weren't together. But I think he was just out drinking and whatnot. So after that, he showed up and moved us back over to the mainland. And then my brother was born. And my dad ended up going to a rehabilitation center. And he was able to quit drinking, which was amazing. And I've always admired him for doing that. But things seemed fairly normal, but there was just a lot of arguing between my parents. And, then we had the little brother, and then my mom was very, more stressed out. And we just kind of kept moving. And there was a lot of arguing. And there was some fun. My dad was a lot of fun. He liked to joke around and he did a lot of cooking and things like he liked to take us camping. And once he left, those things pretty much stopped. And it was just, we were in my mom's world. My grandmother was around quite a bit, and she had been when my dad was around too. As soon as my brother was born, my mom's mom, she would spend a lot of time with us, babysitting and looking after my brother.
So when your dad leaves, how are you feeling? How's your mom doing? And what does your role become immediately after that happens?
Well, I was just, happy that there was no more arguing between the two of them, but also my mom, her anger was enhanced, and my dad was kind of the buffer when he was there, and he would calm her down or make jokes, or they would, the anger would be between the two of them, but then she would start to just take out the anger on myself and my brother because nobody else was there, I guess. And she would go out quite a bit. Like, she didn't drink or anything, but she would go to the dances and things like that. And I would babysit quite a bit and just cook dinner for me and my brother. And yeah, then my mom started dating, and it was the late 70s, and everybody was into the self-help stuff at the time. Like, I noticed my dad had self-help books and other people's parents, and I kind of even got into it at that time. Like, I was a kid and I was interested, like, people were trying to better their lives. And so I kind of questioned my mom. What was she was just angry all the time. And, why don't you go back to school? And are you happy? And I would ask the questions that she didn't want me to ask. She didn't want me to talk to her about things, or she had a really short fuse. So didn't really even know what was going to set it off. And I was a curious kid, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think that's, like, now that I'm a mom myself, I look back, I try to look at my younger self with those eyes. And I, for a very long time, thought that, like, those things were my fault, but they were not. And yeah, so there was a lot of anger and just like neglect, some physical abuse as well. I would say something, I don't even know what I would say. Like, and I would be running up the stairs being chased, her with, the wooden spoon, and we've all had wooden spoons broken over our butts, is what I would think, but not all of us actually have. And yeah, so I would just lock myself in the bathroom quite often to try to get away from her rage, and eventually she'd calm down, and I would come out. I remember my brother was about 4 or 5, and she was angry with him for something, and she was just spanking him like over and over and over. She had him over her lap and just like smacking him. And I was about 11 years old, and I watched her do this, and I just couldn't watch it. And I ran in and I grabbed her arm. I just did it without thinking. And she just looked at me, like, her eyes were just like so angry. And then she just kind of like looked me in the eyes and just like stopped. And then she just stormed off, and my brother just took off. I was surprised that she didn't turn on me, and I just was surprised that I even did that, but I did that without even thinking. And my grandmother was there. She was downstairs, came up, and she had seen my mom starting to take things out on my brother quite a bit. And once that happened, my grandma just kind of started taking my brother over to her place every weekend. And I never really put these two things together until I had to go back and like relive this stuff and think about it, because my brother would be there every weekend at my grandma's. every holiday. And that, like, I was never over there. Like, she'd always take my brother, and I felt left out. But it kind of makes sense that why that happened now, like thinking about that. Maybe she thought that I didn't need protection. So my brother and my grandmother were very close, and he spent, most of his spare time over there with her. And I just kind of did my thing and would spend time outside and spend time reading in my room. And I would go to my dad's when I could. And I did want to go live with my dad as soon as he left, but my dad really loved my mom and didn't want to admit that maybe she wasn't treating us the best, and maybe shouldn't have had us there just because she couldn't control her anger. She wasn't really looking after us. So we were still there for a couple more years. We ended up moving again, and then I ended up starting high school, and then my mom got a boyfriend that started just being there all the time, and he seemed okay. He was nice enough to us. And they kind of started turning us against my dad. I don't even know how they did it, honestly. I just know that all of a sudden I was scared that my dad was going to kidnap me. And I heard a sound outside my window one night, and I was like thinking it was my dad, because they had been saying that he was hanging out down the street and watching the place. And I don't believe that for a minute now, but at the time, I kind of fell into what they were saying. And my brother and I got angry at my dad at one visit and just kind of came home and told my mom that, oh, dad was, he wasn't being very nice. He was arguing with us. It was just over silly stuff. And, oh, well, do you not want to go see him anymore? No, I don't want to see him. And, oh, well, then you don't have to see him. And next thing you know, we're in a court case when my dad had actually never done anything to us, but we had counselors coming to the house, trying to talk to me, trying to ask me questions. And I just shut down. I didn't want anything to do with the situation. I didn't want to be in the court case. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't have anything to say. And they just kept at it. And then we ended up going to court, and my dad got visitation rights, but he had to have supervised visits. And I just remember my mom complaining that who he was bringing with him for the supervised visit, and, this woman, and just the nasty things that she would say about her. And I just started realizing that she was creating the problems, because I'd gone on the visit. The lady was nice. Like, there was nothing inappropriate or nothing going on. Like, I actually had fun going with my dad. I was treated with respect, treated well. He was making his kids a priority. So that we got through that. And I don't think my brother really remembers much of this, because he was pretty young. And it just actually amazes me that, speaking to my brother as we're older, and he says that, growing up, he had a completely different experience than I did, which I hear this a lot. I mean, he was a lot younger, and he wasn't really affected by a lot of this stuff. So a lot of it he doesn't remember. which is good, but it was very, very much a big deal for me. And so then my dad moved away after that, but was still in contact with us, still came and visited. And then my mom moved us away to another, like to an area hours away, which was quite isolated. And there was no reason to move us away. To me, it didn't make any sense. We were situated. We'd been in the same area for many years, had the same friends, starting school. It was like, some form of stability there. And she just moved us. So we moved away. And my mom would leave with her boyfriend, and I would be looking after my brother quite a bit. And there would be like no food left in the fridge. And I would have to get us to school and like take care of the house and the laundry and things like that. So when she came back, I just kind of was fed up and I ran away. I rebelled. When I went back to where we had used to live and saw my friends, and one of the moms had offered for me to stay with them and I could go to school there and whatnot. And so I was trying to do that. And I talked to another friend, and her mom actually had said to me, well, what are you doing here? And I said, well, we were isolated and I didn't know why we had moved. And she had said, well, your mom said that she moved because of you, because you were always getting into trouble. I just was in shock. And I didn't really have anything to say to that. I was just surprised. And I realized it didn't matter what I did say, because I was the child and my mom was the adult, and she was believed over me. She didn't really have relationships with anybody, like my friends' moms. They didn't know her except for, maybe to see through me or at the school, or that was it. Like she didn't have close relationships for anyone to get to know her enough to see what was actually happening behind closed doors. So I just felt that I didn't have a voice, and there wasn't anyone to speak to anyway, besides my dad. And she could do no wrong in his eyes, even though he knew that she was doing wrong. He just had a soft spot for her. So I kind of just tried to really like draw from things like music and went into my books and things like that. But even back then, I remember like one of the first albums that I had bought was Trooper Hot Shots. And there's a song called Raise a Little Hell that really like spoke to me. It said, if you don't like what you've got, why don't you change it? Your world is all screwed up. Rearrange it. And I thought, okay, that sounds pretty simple. And I have the power to do that for myself. And it also said, if you don't like what you see, why don't you fight it? If you see something wrong, then write it. In the end, it comes down to your thinking. And like nobody's going to come and help you, basically. So I just kind of thought I need to go live with my dad. And I kind of just stayed with my friends for a little bit. And then the first time I ran away, I got brought home and my mom got violent with me again. And I just persisted that I wanted to go to my dad's. So I stayed with a friend until my dad came to pick me up. My mom, the friend's mom, asked my mother, can you leave a few dollars for food and things like that? Because we're going to be having her here for a while until her dad is able to come and get her. Oh, yeah, here you go. And they handed her $10. And she was just kind of taken aback. But she took it and just said, okay, thanks. And so I stayed there for a bit, and then my dad came to get me, and I went to live with him for a while, and then kind of went back and forth, went back to see my mom and my brother. And I remember just like, I could never have friends over, and I had a friend over, and she asked like what we wanted to have for breakfast. And I remember we both said different types of eggs. And then my mom just lost her mind and started screaming and saying like, this isn't a hotel. And then I said like, relax, we can have the same type of eggs. It's fine. And then she just, don't talk back to me, go to your room. And now I'm like 15, I think. And I felt a little too old to be sent to my room. And the friend that was with me, she was a year or two older than me. And I just was also like horrified that my friend was having to see this. So my mom came out and just said, you're like, go to your room, and started getting physical with me, trying to push me in there. And she's trying to like hit me. And I just put my arms like around her arms and just tried to hug her and hold her. And I thought that was going to calm her down. I was just like, just stop. And she just kept getting more angry and flipped me over. And I landed on the wooden coffee table on my back. And then my friend said, let's go. Just come to my house. We're not going to stay here. You can't stay here. And so I grabbed a couple of things and I left with her. And I didn't really understand what had happened. Thought somehow that was my fault. But I had someone else there to be another set of eyes, because I really didn't trust my own perception of things, because like I always just thought, well, this happened because I did something, just because that's kind of what I was told, or what my mom would tell people. So I believed that. So when my friend said, come on, you're coming with me to my house, like you're not going to stay here, I felt guilty leaving, but I grabbed a few things and we left, and we went to her place, and her parents took me in and were amazing. And they were really easygoing, super friendly, like just said, when my friend told them what had happened, they said, that's not right. Something's not right there. And I mean, just hearing other people say, yeah, the situation is not normal. It helped me to realize people don't all live like that. But when that's what you're exposed to, you don't know. And I mean, when I did see how other people lived when I was younger, and I would come home and say, hey, well, other people aren't like screaming at their kids for everything, and they're not throwing things around and yelling and getting violent. Like, I would just get in trouble. I was labeled the bad kid that talked back. And yeah, just going back and thinking about all of this, it's like super emotional. It may not sound like huge traumatic events to others, but for a kid, it was. And as an adult now, like I don't think about this stuff often. I have kind of like grown and like tried to do a lot of healing over it, but like looking back at it, it all still, when I look back at it and have to talk about it, it still really hurts. But the more I talk about it, the easier it's getting. I also didn't want to talk about things because I did feel like my voice was silenced and that nobody would listen and that nobody would believe me anyway. So that was just stuff that happened like at a very young age. And then later on, I always would go back to my mom because she was my mom. And I wanted a mom. And I felt sorry for her. I felt that she'd had, a bad run of things. So after that, I went back to my dad's. I was grateful to have some good friends, but I'd been through quite a bit of abuse that I didn't even know I had really been through because like I didn't really understand why my mom had treated me this way. When I was younger and after I'd kind of like pulled my mom off of my brother and I had started like standing up to her and started asking her questions and like, it's kind of like all these things are not just getting past me. I'm aware of some stuff that's happening and I kind of bring it up. She kind of started just distancing herself from me in a way where, like, at night when I would say, I love you, good night. Like, I think I told her that I hated her once in a fight. And then she stopped saying that she loved me. So these things, they really get to your core. And I did feel that at my younger brother, he would get sick and my mother would look after him. And I would get sick and I had to get hospitalized and she would not visit me. So these things, like looking back, and now that I'm a mom, they even hit harder now than they did then because I know how I love my daughter and how I could never do those things. But so there's different stages to this kind of abuse. Like when you're in it, it's almost like you don't even realize what you're in. And then later when you grow and you know something's wrong, you just don't exactly know what it is. And then later when you grow and you have different experiences and you kind of have more things to compare it to, different, like it hurts in different ways. But I still continue to try to have a mother-daughter relationship.
So you have that normalcy of when you're older, and that really adds to what you went through when you were younger. And, the neglect and abuse worsened when you were 15. So tell us about this.
I went back to my mom's and my mom had broken up with the boyfriend that was like helping her turn us against my dad. And she had met somebody else And they'd only known each other for 6 months. And yet they were going to get married. And so I think I kind of just got pulled into all this drama. And I ended up staying with her and my brother. I don't think I had intended to. And so they got married. They were fighting, and he had a son that was around my age, and there was a lot of chaos going on. And she had asked me, which she did, she confided in me, started to confide in me, and would ask me things and tell me things that I don't think were really appropriate, because I was 15 and she was my mom. Like, I don't want to hear about things with your boyfriend and that maybe I shouldn't be hearing. But she had asked, should I get married? What do you think? And I said, I don't think you should. If you're this stressed out about it, I think you should wait. And she got married anyway. And then we all moved in together, and they had met at the church, a new church that I guess she'd started to go to. And yeah, so they got married very quickly. We moved in, and then we all had to go to church. I was working, and because I wasn't going to school, just all the moving back and forth. And I had a job, and I was wanting to save up for a car because I was getting a ride every day to work, and it was pretty far. And then I'd have to take the bus home, quite a long way. So I was trying to save up for a car for when I got my license. And the husband, he just said, no, you got to pay room and board now that you're working. And then the first thing that I actually bought when we moved in there were posters. I was really into my music. Like, I bought a Jim Morrison poster. I loved the Doors. And I bought a Motley Crue poster. And I don't remember if I bought any others, but put those up. And that was kind of my escape, my music. And I came home from work one day, and I went to put my music on, and I looked, and my posters are gone. And so I go upstairs. Somebody take my posters? And I thought maybe his son had taken them or something. And he says, yeah, I did. I ripped those down. It's like, oh, why'd you do that? Well, they're satanic, is what he said. And I just said, okay, well, you could have just told me that they weren't allowed in the house. I just paid for those with my money that I earned. So I would speak up, and I just felt that there was a lot of immaturity in the adults in my life, like my mother and now him. So then I paid for a concert, but my friends from a couple hours away were coming. We were going to drive over to the States to go see Bon Jovi. And I had done something or said something. And so I got grounded, and I wasn't allowed to go to the concert. It's what the punishment was. And just, again, it was like I was just getting over all of this excess punishment for just speaking up. So maybe I was a bad kid. I don't know. But I went to the concert anyway because my friends, they had driven for a couple of hours, and they'd been planning this for, months. So we went, and I thought, I'll deal with the consequences later. And when I got back, my mom was greeting me at the door and said, oh, you can't be here. You can't be here. He can't see you. I said, okay, why not? Because he's so angry, and you can't be here. pack up a bag. You're going to go stay with my friend. It's like, okay. So I had to go stay with her friend who was a bachelor, who he didn't mind having me there. I cleaned and stuff, but I didn't know how long I was going to be there for. I didn't know what was happening. It was just basically, you're gone. And then a couple weeks later, I'm not sure what the time was, but it wasn't too long. And my mom's husband had smacked my brother across the face. And my brother was 9. I guess that spurred my mom to leave. I don't know the whole story of what happened there, but I got the phone call that they were in a home for battered women, and then I was to come there. So I went there. And so we were there for a while, and then we ended up getting an apartment. They gave me a bed from this battered women place. I don't even know what happened to all our stuff. So we had this apartment, and we were there for a few months, and then she got back together with her previous boyfriend, the one that was around when the whole court case stuff was happening. So they got back together. So it was just like flight or fight mode, really. At some point, I think I was trying to go back to school then. I was going to an alternative school. Just because all the moving and different things happening, it was tough to stay in a school. So, yeah, I remember they asked a question like, how many times have you moved? And I answered, or how many times have you moved in the last year or 2 years or something like that? And I answered, and it was a ridiculous number. And the teacher said, that's impossible. And I didn't try to explain or get into it because I realized that, yeah, it does feel like it seems impossible, but it's not. Like, but maybe for most regular people, it's impossible. It wasn't for us because it was certainly the case. But again, there's no point in trying to tell this to people or explain anything because they're not going to get it. And so I just, again, kind of felt silenced. That is kind of a big theme for myself, like not having a voice. But yeah, so we were in this apartment, and then she got back with the boyfriend, and then my sister, who I never really explained about my brother and sister either, my older brother and sister. When I was about 6 years old, my mom had said, oh, do you remember you have an older sister? Do you remember me telling you about that? And I did not remember her telling me about that. And I was pretty shocked and surprised. And, I thought that I was the only daughter and all of those things. And then I learned the story about it. And then I was excited and couldn't wait to meet her. And then she came to visit, and it was great. I had a big sister. She took us roller skating. I was showing her off around the neighborhood. And then, yeah, she kind of disappeared in the middle of the night, took off. And she was 16 when we met her. And I guess she had gotten into some trouble and thought, that she found my mom. Our mom, she found her somehow. So she was kind of in and out of our lives, back and forth and whatnot. And we were in touch. My mom and her were in touch. And she had called and asked if I could go and visit. She would send money for a bus ticket, and I could come out for a week or so. And my mom said, you should go now. It's a good time. It's a good time to go visit. So I said, okay. I was happy to get out of there, go maybe, have some enjoyment. So I went, and I got to see my sister. My sister had a daughter who was my niece. Got to spend some time with them. And then I tried calling my mom and the phone was cut off. And I thought, okay, well, my mom would do this every now and then. She'd talk on the phone with my sister, talk long distance for hours, and then not pay the phone bill. So I figured that's what had happened. And so I had a ride. Anyways, I had a ride arranged with a friend to pick me up. My friend picked me up, drove me to our apartment. My key was inside my suitcase, and I just thought, oh, I'll just ring the buzzer, and somebody different answered. I was like, oh, I got the wrong buzzer. So I rang again, same person. I was like, hey, Mom. Nope, this isn't anybody's mom. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. And so then I walked around because we lived on the ground floor, walked around, looked in the windows, and there's a different lady dusting different furniture in our apartment. And I just looked, and it was just the most surreal thing. And me and my friend just looked at each other, and I went back and buzzed the landlord, and I said, so we thought, well, maybe they left a message, or maybe there's a message for you as to where they are. So I buzzed the landlord, and she said, oh, no, they did a midnight move. Oh, okay, thanks. So there I am, just kind of standing there with my friend, and she said, well, does your mom have any friends that might know where she is? And I thought, I don't know. I mean, there's a couple of people that that live close by that might know. So I did go and look and ask, and nobody knew that she was even moving. She hadn't told anyone. And I went to where her boyfriend had lived. Nope, nobody knew anything. So I was back to my mom's friend, the bachelor's place. And to my friend, she was obviously worried about me, but I didn't want anybody to worry. And I kind of tried to downplay things to save other people's feelings of worry, I guess. So I was just like, oh, no, it's okay. No, I can stay here. Just, you got to go. You're going to get into traffic. Like, just drop me off. He wasn't home, so I just got dropped off on his porch, basically, and waited. And so I stayed there. And I didn't want to go back to my dad's. I have no idea really why. I didn't. And so it was about a month before I found out where my mom was. And then I got over there. I had to hitchhike, got to where she was with my brother and her boyfriend. They had moved over to Vancouver Island. And yeah, I made it there, and she said, where were you? This is what she said to me. And I said, where was I? Where were you? And yeah, she basically blamed me. I don't know how she did that, but so there we were in an apartment over there, and her boyfriend, he had not been a drinker previously. Now he was drinking. I guess he was a drinker previously, but then he was sober for many years, and now he is back to drinking, which we had never seen. So that wasn't very good. It was, he started to get violent with me. I remember not having a key and saying, I'm not a dog. So then that spurred him to grab me by the hair and throw me down. So yeah, my mom just kind of supported him in that. And pretty soon after that, my brother went to visit my dad for summer vacation. And my brother just was about 10 years old at this time. So yeah, now I was 16. And my brother went for summer vacation to visit my dad, and he never came back, which was good. Like, he was in a better, safer place, is what I thought. And I just kind of, for some reason, felt like I needed to be there to help my mom, that she needed my help. And her boyfriend had broken her nose and like smashed her face into the wall. And so she had left. She was in a transition house again for battered women, and that's where we were going to be staying. So that's where I went. And then, so I get there, and my mom had said, well, you've been to your sister's place, who lived in a different province. I want you to take me there. Can you take us there? I said, okay, yeah, sure, I can take you there. So we got on a bus. We go there. We couldn't get a hold of her because I guess she had changed her number. I don't know. And so we just showed up. Luckily, she was there. My sister has had Crohn's disease. She ended up in the hospital, but we were there, and her boyfriend was working, and then her daughter was going to school. So it's like, okay, well, help out around the house. You know, it's kind of a good time to be there anyway. I ended up getting the chicken pox. So I was in bed, and my sister's boyfriend came in, and he said, oh, you might want to go grab your mom. She left. And I was just kind of laying there sick. And I was like, well, I'm sure she'll come back. And he says, I don't think so. She took all her stuff. And I kind of said, wouldn't kill you to pick up a vacuum. And she stormed out. I was like, oh no. So I threw on some clothes, ran out. This tiny little town in like Alberta. And I'm like calling her. I'm looking up and down the streets, and I don't see her. She's nowhere. Like, and you can see for miles there. She must have got out and started hitchhiking or something. And I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. So she was gone. And this is something that she does or did, always has done. She overreacts to things like emotional immaturity. Like, it wouldn't kill you to pick up a vacuum. Well, it wouldn't. Like, instead of packing your stuff up, storming off, and leaving your kid, I was still a kid, 16. And why don't you just say, oh, you know, I'm sorry, my mind is somewhere else. Yeah, I will definitely help out. Like, that is what makes sense. But she didn't do these things. And I didn't realize until you, Brandon, pointed out, well, what age do you think your mom is stuck at emotionally? Oh my, like, I never even thought about that. Because I always just thought, that's my mom. But she was definitely stuck somewhere, like, as a teenager. And that was a really good example of that. So she ended up leaving. I called my dad, and she had gone back out west. Her boyfriend had come and pick her up, and they had actually called my dad and said, yeah, we think it's a good idea if you close your doors to her. Do not let her come and live with you, because it's good for her to just stay where she is. So this is the one time that my dad really let me down. I don't know, like, why they said it was such a good idea that he closed the doors to me, like what it was that I had done here. But I think that it was just easier for them to get rid of me. But then they also like had to sabotage me. That part I don't understand. So, and yeah, my dad, who was always my like supporter and rock, he turned his back on me that time. So I stayed there until my sister got out of the hospital. And my sister was all, she wanted me to stay there and she was going to help me get a car and all that stuff. But no, I wanted to go back to my mom. I don't like, looking at all of this, it's like, I don't understand it, but I had this need to make things like right with her for some reason. So my sister said, yeah, here, like, I'm going to clean the house and then I'll pay you and then you can get your bus fare to get home. So I did that. I went back and I found her, and like it kind of gets blurry there as well. Like I don't really remember all of this, but I know that we ended up in the transition house again, her and her boyfriend. Something else happened, and then we got another place, and then they got back together again, and then I was basically discarded like again when I turned, and she left me a birthday. They left me a birthday card saying, "Happy birthday. We'll be back in a few days." And then when they came back, they had gotten married. And they said, yeah, and you're to go, we're going to take you to the government office where you're going to get on government financial assistance and you're going to go on your own. And I thought, okay, sure. Like, I'm happy to get out of here. Like, I'm done with this. But, I realized that now that she was married, she could no longer get money for me. So I was useless. But of course, she would say that it was because I wasn't following the rules or I had done something like to deserve that kind of treatment, which this just was not the case. So even when we went into the government office, the woman there said, "You do realize this is abandonment." And my mom instantly changed her tune, like, "Oh, well, she won't follow the rules of the house and she won't do, she's doing whatever, she's drinking," whatever it was that she was saying that I was doing. And I think the woman just realized the situation because she's dealt with enough people. Like, that's what her job is. So I think she knows how to read people. And she did give me the assistance. And I was also assigned a person to come and like check on me. So I got my own place and I ended up, getting a job. I didn't want to be on government assistance. Like, I know that it's there for people that need it. And some people really need it. And it's a godsend to them. For myself, I didn't want to be the same as my mom. I wanted to break that cycle. I didn't want to have her life. I didn't want to be anything like her. And so, yeah, I worked, I put myself through school, and my mom ended up, back and forth with her husband. They ended up divorcing and then remarrying and then divorcing again. It's a very long story with those two. I ended up getting into a relationship with someone who was a lot like my mom and realizing, a lot of us, what we do subconsciously is we just seek out what's familiar because it feels like normal and it feels like what we're used to. So I had a beautiful daughter with this person, and I wanted to stay with that person because I didn't want to have a broken home, until I realized that it was hurting my daughter more than doing the right thing for her. It was not helping her, it was hurting her. When he would scream at me, and she was just 2, and she looked at me and she was laughing and she was holding my face and she was saying, "Look at me, mommy, look at me." So luckily I was able to get away from that situation, and I did. That's like a whole nother podcast, but just wanted to touch on it briefly. And once I left that relationship, I went full on fierce, independent. I don't want anybody in my life. I want to do everything myself. I don't want to depend on anyone. I just want this like safety zone of peace of mind, of like creating the world that I want to live in, and creating like a safe and a stable home for my daughter, giving her like those things that I wanted as a kid and didn't have, like not physical things, but like the relationship with my mom, the things that like things that I did have, some of those things with my dad, thankfully. And yeah, I just wanted to be nothing like my mom and just provide a good life and just change my situation. And I was able to do that once, like the toxicity, like the negative people were removed. It was amazing how well everything went, and the chaos was gone. I did work quite a bit, became a bit of a workaholic. I did need to make money to support myself and my daughter. A lot of that was to keep my mind busy so that I didn't focus on any of the like negative stuff that had happened, or like I didn't want to look at that stuff anymore. And while that can be good, like it was good and I did do a lot of positive things, I don't think I really fully dealt with it properly. I did see counselors a few times and talk about it, but like you just never know what you need to do, like what is going to help to make that heal. Because I thought I was good, I thought I was great, I thought I was over it. Not over it, but I thought it can't hurt me anymore. That was in the past. That was the old me. That was the young me. I'm now like a strong, independent woman. This stuff can't hurt me. And I like ended up having to cut contact with my mom, because even in my adulthood, she still would just hurt me. She'd do things like, "I was over in your area at Christmas time. I didn't have your phone number with me. So yeah, I was over visiting your brother and I didn't have your phone number with me. So I didn't call, but I'm home now. Oh yeah, I just wanted to say Merry Christmas." Like things like that, just digs. And while you had my phone number, you could have called me, or you didn't make it a priority to take my phone number with you. So that's just a big thing, not being a priority at all. And the family I have now makes me a priority, and I make them a priority. And they're my number one priority. So anyway, I cut contact with her, and not because it was easy to do, because it wasn't, but it was the only thing I could do just to move forward. And I still would talk to her here and there, like briefly, just to make sure she's okay. Like when all the lockdowns and everything happened, I made sure I tried to connect and just see if she needed anything. And then she's getting a lot older. So I want to do the right thing. And it's something I've struggled with because, yeah, she's done all these things to me, but like, I know she doesn't have the capacity mentally. I don't want to make excuses for her either, but also know that that's who she is. And yeah, she could have changed. She could have done work on herself if she chose to, but she didn't. And I still want to be who I am. And I'm not going to let her walk all over me. And I'm not going to ever have that relationship with her, obviously, that I would like to have. But something happened like recently where I decided to check on her. And I thought, you know what? It's been a couple of years since I've seen her and I don't talk to her. I just a little bit of hello here and there when she calls. It's just superficial stuff. It's not even a real relationship at this point. It's just, hi, how are you? Like nothing in depth. But I thought maybe I'll take her out for a meal, see how she is. And she can't hurt me because I've done all this work and I know how to handle her. I know how to deal with this. So I gave her a call and I said, did you want to go grab a meal? Oh, yeah, sounds good. We arranged a time for me to call her back and I was going to pick her up, just make sure she was ready. I called her back, no answer. I go there, no answer. I wait half an hour. She's not there. Okay, well, I wasn't expecting her to do this, so she can still surprise me. So an hour and a half later, I had to go back to where I was staying. So it was quite a drive. And she calls and says, "Oh, I got your messages. Yeah, I was waiting for you down the road where you said we were going to meet." And I didn't say that. I was going to pick you up. And so she ended up getting nasty and hanging up the phone on me. And I was just like, okay, this is the regular stuff that she does. And I actually started thinking, was I supposed to pick her up? Like I saw how gaslighting works, where when all this stuff was happening when I was younger, I had no idea about any of that. I mean, I've heard the term now many times, but I still never really understood it until I got off the phone and I'm sitting there thinking, was I supposed to pick her up there? Was this my fault? And then I realized, no, you weren't ever going to go to the spot where she's 80 years old. You weren't going to allow her to walk somewhere. Like, so second guessing myself, which is also something that I do because of, I don't want to blame anybody for this, but it is a side effect of a lot of this stuff. Like for many years, I was just a people pleaser. I also would just go out of my way to make sure everybody else is looked after. And then I don't get what I need because I don't want to need anything because I don't want to be selfish. And these are things that take a lot of work to undo or evolve into the new, your new life once you leave a traumatic relationship. And some of it is even in our DNA and it's in our family lineage. And I really learned that recently when I had a visit from some cousins about a month ago. And my cousin is the daughter of my mom's brother. And she's an amazing person from I don't know her very well, but I look to her as like somebody that she looks like. She's strong. She's beautiful. She's successful. She's very well spoken. And I just really admire her. And we got to talking. And so I've been really quiet for many years about all of this stuff because I feel ashamed. So I don't bring it up or like, it's not something I want to talk about with people. And so with my cousin, she wanted to arrange this big family meeting, dinner and all that, which when she came last time, I went and it was very difficult. I didn't say anything. I went and I, just went through the motions and because I wanted to see her. And then this time I just said, you know what? I can't do that. I'm sorry. I can't be around my mom. I can't be around, my brother. And for these, reasons. And if you do want to get together, I would love to see you, but I'm sorry, it'll have to just be without them. And I would never have done that before. I would always have just gone through the motions. And so I was proud of myself for doing that. And I didn't know how it was going to be received. I thought, oh, geez, like she's not going to want to see me. I'm going to miss out on seeing her now. But I also need to have boundaries. And it was actually really well received, to my surprise. And so I got to meet with her and with my other cousins and other people. And we had and my daughter and my husband and my daughter's boyfriend, my stepdaughter as well. So it was great. And I got to spend a lot of time with my cousin and we got to speak and talk about things. And she told me her story. And she went through a lot of similar stuff as far as abandonment from her dad, who is my mom's brother. And so it runs in families. It was so similar to the point that he has been married 5 times. I don't know anybody that's been married 5 times except my mom and her brother. And I was shocked. Something hit me too. And I thought, when I was looking at her and she was telling me this, and I thought, wow, I had so much compassion for her and so much just looked at her and I thought, what if I looked at myself that way? And I just went, something like a light bulb clicked inside of me. And I thought, I need to have compassion for myself and realize what I went through wasn't my fault. And I am a good person. And it just kind of healed me in a way that it was very profound for me. And she also felt very good about it. And I think that's why it's so important that we do talk about it, even though it can be really hard. Even though you think, well, what I went through wasn't so bad. A lot of people go through stuff. This is what I told myself. And I know a lot of people do go through stuff, but it was bad for me. And that's okay. It's okay to say, hey, I had a hard time with this. And what can I do? What can I do so that this doesn't affect me anymore? Or it doesn't affect me in ways that I don't want it to affect me? What can I do so that those things that happen to me don't follow me into this new life that I've created for myself and affect it negatively? Because I want to create a better life for my family here, now, today. And I don't want those old negative things to have power anymore. And I don't want to give them power. So
So you're done. Look at the relief on your face. So what everyone doesn't know is that, well, I don't know if anyone doesn't know or does know, but this wasn't easy to do for you. And there's been, besides technical difficulties, we've gotten together before and tried to record, and we were back today, and today you did a great job. You went through this life where it was all about your mom's needs, and to the point where it made you feel that you were worthless, because when she wanted to drop you for her partner, which is most of the time, she just dropped you to the point where she didn't even care to make any contact, and then she'd gaslight you in the aftermath. And in our original talk, not just last time, the time before that, you thought you had dealt with everything and that you dealt with this trauma and you'd done all of this work, but that last incident with your mom, you opened up the door to kind of let her back in, or be like, oh, she's getting up there in age. I kind of just want to get that thing that I never got, or be there in some sort of way. But it was the same old person. There wasn't even a honeymoon period. It was just immediate, and that set you back further. And then eventually you called me. And I'm sorry that you know who I am, but you went through, I don't know who wouldn't feel good about themselves. Does that even make sense what I just said? I don't know exactly what I just said. But to go through what you went through psychologically and be able to feel a lot of worth or value in yourself would be tremendously difficult with what your mom had done. And you were surviving and fending for yourself, and you were caretaking your mom when your mom needed caretaking. And you were her parent, and she was not a parent to you. And a lot of people around you, some failed, some did their best. Your friends' parents did their best, but you were failed, and you were gonna have a lot of issues after that. But you have your family, 2 kids, and you have stability for your first time in your life when you started to have kids and everything. You had a home that you wanted, but there was this thing there always with your mom, kind of there. And even though you had that, it was still there. And everyone who's listened today is giving you a big hug. And this is one of those traumas where even when you get over it, you think you got over it, it's there. And who knows if it will ever go away. It might dissipate a little, but it's there. And we're just happy you're here to tell your story, that you're alive, because a lot of things could have gone wrong in that time when you were younger. So usually I kind of end this way, but we haven't gotten to any sort of words of wisdom. So do you want to give some words of wisdom to everyone who's listening?
I think if we just can take some kind of lesson from every pain that we go through, even when it doesn't make sense why we went through the pain, then it was worth it. Because my mom may have taught me what not to do as a mother. And maybe that seems like it's not really a lesson, but it just made me appreciate being a mother that much more and being there for my daughter. Like, I will be in the trenches with my daughter no matter what, no matter both my daughters, like no matter what happens, I will never turn my back on them. And that's what I take away from it. So let's try to create something positive out of the negative. I also bought myself this little book many years ago. It's just the Everyday Positive Thinking by Louise Hay. And it's just got little words of wisdom every day. And I would just open one up. And here's one here that I just opened it up to. Be confident enough to be able to voice your opinions without fear of recrimination. As such, you will inspire the same action in others. And that's Deepak Chopra. So maybe I'll stand on that.
And that's by Louise Hay's, that book. If anyone doesn't know who Louise Hay is, big in the self-help community, passed away. And I think before podcasts were really big, there was something called Hay House Radio, which I think still exists, which people can go listen to with a lot of good stuff like that that's on there. So just a big thank you for being here with us today. And you're going to help a lot of people by sharing your story. So just a big, big, big thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been a big step for me, and it's been amazing talking to you and working with you, like the many hours that we've had together.
Well, thank you, Arden, for being here once again. And if you want to be a guest like Arden was today, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. Click on the guest form at the top of the page. There you can read all of our instructions, and please read them all and either send us an email at narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com or fill out our guest form and press the submit button. And please do send it in the format that we ask for. Also at our website, we have a support group. So if you need support, join our support group at narcissistapocalypse.com. Inside, you'll see that we have Zoom meetings every Wednesday night, Thursday afternoons, and Saturday nights. We have forum boards for you to post on to get the validation that you need from survivors just like you. It is a wonderful group of people on there, and you can make a lot of friends too. So if you need support, join our support group today. And that is it for today's episode, for today's survivor story. So for myself and Arden, we hope you have a good night.